Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode. I'm your host, Brandon Cobb, co-founder of HBG Capital, and today I've got Hugh Massie on the show. He's an executive chairman and founder of DNA Behavior International, the behavior and money insights company. Get this, he's widely recognized as the Titan 100 CEO and behavioral solutions architect. I know this sounds like a mouthful, but this is going to be some cool stuff that we're getting into today, guys. Like literally, we're going to be talking about quantum leap growth mindset, building a plan for over 1 billion people impact. With that, he's got a framework that addresses every opportunity and challenge through the behavioral lens. We're going to talk about some deep psychological stuff, why you make the decisions that you make, and how you can use this to make better decisions today and deal with stress and just get a better ROI in life. Hugh, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Brandon. Yeah, I'm great to talk with you about helping people get a better ROI on life, or return on life, however you want to put it. But that's what it's all about.
And this is so unique. I've never had a guest with your background before. Literally, he's got 11 pages of awesome information in here. And this is stuff I'm really interested in. I love the whole biohacking thing. I love understanding human psychology, why we make the decisions that we make. But more importantly, most of all, what excites me is how to use these tools that give us this information about ourselves to actually make the change in life. And I think you've got an assessment or something we're going to talk about today that lets the audience do that exact thing. Before we jump into the good stuff, tell us your story.
Yeah, so Brandon, I come from Australia, so you can tell my accent is not, it's not really from Atlanta, although that's where I live. And I started the journey to America about 24 years ago when I came across my ideas or had my thoughts crystallized around the DNA behavior business. But before that, I had started my career as a CPA in Sydney, Australia. Worked as a tax specialist. Worked in Asia Pacific area in Singapore and Thailand for 4 years. I had pretty varied corporate and life experiences with all of that. But after about 10 years being in the corporate world, I decided I was a caged up tiger and I needed to go out on the street and build something for myself. And I had the notion in my head that I would do wealth management and I would put a tailor-made suit on every client. That the banks and private banks were sort of, insurance companies were treating people a little bit on a cookie cutter basis, and there had to be a way to to build a service and a brand that treated people uniquely. I didn't really know what all of that meant and how to do it all. I just started the business, and it became pretty successful pretty much straight away. But then 3 or 4 years into the business, a friend of mine asked me on a Saturday morning breakfast, Hugh, you don't seem really that excited about what you're doing. I know it's been successful for you, but what are you passionate about? And I hadn't been asked that question, or if I hadn't thought about it that deeply. But that day I said, I want to help Sarah. I want to help people all over the world become financially self-empowered. And the way it came out of my mouth, just like that, Brandon, rocked me enough that I needed to go and do something about that. I was at that stage of life, sort of on a bit of a spiritual journey, figuring things out. Yeah, if that's come from my subconscious, I need to work out how to make something of that. And it's not doing wealth management the way I was doing it. So I thought about it, and I started looking at my day journal and realized I've been writing about human behavior for years. And that my success in the CPA world, my success in the wealth management world had been treating people differently because of who they were. I used to be able to write tax advice letters, financial plans, state plans, whatever it was, and customize it for each person based on how I believe they needed it communicated to them, how they would read it, do the research. Some people got a 2-page letter, other people would get a 50-page letter. That's how I did it. And so I had intuitively knew those things. And I realized that also I started looking at people and how they made decisions about money. People often get emotional. They get very stressed. I would be meeting with clients and they would all be calm and relaxed, discussing a transaction or what they wanted to do. And then suddenly under pressure, they'd behave differently. And I thought, I need to know what this pressure behavior is, because that's when the decisions get made, or that's when a really potentially catastrophic decision could get made if someone just makes a decision out of emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, I had a chance meeting with a psychologist. So this was about a year after I had my aha moment. And she said, Hugh, what all of this is that people have a natural, hardwired behavioral style that's set by the time they're about 3 years old. And we know now it's 85% by the time you're 3 years old. That shapes a lot of your life decision making, because it's really your instinctive zone for making decisions. And that's how people make most decisions.
So did
And
you
of
say
course,
about 3 years old?
yeah,
So by
yeah,
3 years old, we have certain things programmed in us that are going to carry with us throughout our entire life that are basically a blueprint or an operating system, if you will, for making
right.
decisions. But by 3 years old,
Absolutely. You got it. By the time you're 3 years old, that's it.
what goes into that? Like why? Because it seems like I don't even remember when I was 3 years old, right? I don't know if most people remember when they're 3 years. Like what happens to form that mental operating system for decision makings for the like the rest of your life?
So you wanted to get deep and dirty, but this happens from the environment you're in when you're conceived, right? That's the first point.
Uh-huh.
Um, and then you're in some ways a being all the way through there, through birth and through the
Mhm.
early years of your life. And so when you look at me and in my family, my father died when I was 15 months old, um, and was diagnosed with terminal brain tumor when I was 6 months old. And right at that point, my mother's pregnant with my brother. And so a whole lot of things go on in the family dynamics, the emotional scene that you're in or you're not in, and in a way, how as a child I was somewhat left to my own devices. That shapes a lot of who I am. So there's now a mixture of my genetics
Okay.
and the life environment and dynamics that I existed in under 3 years old is very shaping, and it's shaping for me, but also shaping for my brother,
Mhm.
and perhaps differently because we are polar opposite as men now, in our
Yeah.
50s. But that's what goes into it, but it's not just about. And I bring this up not because I am a victim of that. I look at life as don't be the victim, be the victor. But there's lots of other people since I've got on this behavioral journey where I've seen if something significant's happened very early in their life. It shaped them, and it's interesting. It shaped people in very similar ways, and so there's a lot to this, Brandon. But this is not just Hugh Massie saying this. There are other since then since I got onto the theory with the help of a psychologist, and then we pieced together the program. There have been others that have corroborated that. There's a
Yeah.
lot more science university-wise from leading professors that say the same thing. What we've sought to do more, though, is to get it measured and then apply this in terms of how people make financial decisions, because you make financial decisions based on who you are and
Right.
um, how you're wired up. And so once you've got that connection, that's that's the genesis of what we're doing here.
Yeah.
Um,
So let's jump into that. So I mean, I can relate to this to a point where I remember certain things. Like three is tough to wrap my mind around. There's the physiological element that's like, okay, mom was taking drugs while pregnant, and that's going to have a very physiological reaction on the baby that's going to have that. And then there's the just environment, like you say, whether or not the mom is stressed. You mentioned losing your father when you were uh 15 weeks old, I think it was. And those environments having a certain type of effect on you and your brain, which causes a physiological permanent
yeah,
response in you that carries with you for the rest of your life. That's amazing. I know I know for sure, just, as a kid, I got bullied a lot when I was very, very young and, like,
Yep,
middle school, and I that definitely affected my confidence for years, and that confidence, well, or that lack of, I should say, that influenced my decision making. What I was comfortable doing, what
absolutely.
I was not comfortable doing. I mean, it's very real what you're talking about.
Right, and I think that life is a continuous journey where we're being continually impacted by the environment we're in, the people that show up. But I suppose what we know is that what happens under 3 years old and then under 7 is very, very shaping, and it's hard to change. But there's still significant things that go on in your emotional development, say between 7 and 18. So like being bullied at school when you're 12, 13, 14, 15, being the outcast can have a big impact. It absolutely affects your confidence. But I think it's probably easier to get past some of that, even though it's quite deep,
Mhm.
than it is the stuff that happens
When you're
when you
when you're
when
3
you're a
years old,
baby.
'cause I can actively remember, "Oh, I'm acting like this because I was bullied. Let me start making conscious effort in order to become more confident, let me go" whatever that is, get out of my comfort zone, do whatever
Right.
it is I need to, and so I can do something about that. I remember the first time where I realized, like, there's a big event in my life. There's an aha moment where I realized the reason I was acting a certain way was because I never got a lot of love and affection from my dad growing up, and I was seeking this
Yep.
affection among my other friend groups. I was doing things to try to impress my friends, and I realized the reason I'm doing that is because I get like attaboys from them. I never got that from my dad. As soon as I realized that was going on, I immediately was like, "Oh my god, I don't need to act like this anymore." But when you're 3 years old, you I don't even know what those things are, so walk us through how to identify some of those, maybe not the things that caused it, but maybe what's happened to shape us into who we are after 3 years old. Like, how do you identify or unlock the, the limiting beliefs or behaviors that form because of your environment at the age of 3?
Well, I think it's interesting, Brandon, and the way I've done it is that really through the work in building the behavioral assessment system that we have today, and understanding, and at the start understanding we're all hardwired from early in life. That's your natural strength. So just accept the strengths and struggles this brings you and embrace it and say, like I look at it and say, okay, the circumstances I came from, not great. Everybody, you will always want to have had a father, but I've been handed an opportunity in terms of my strengths and talents, and I've got to work on those and go and honor him by making the most of them. And I think that's sort of taking a positive mindset to it. And you know, uh, that's really what I've gone and done. And maybe it was an opportunity that was set up for me for the building of my life. I didn't obviously, you don't see that when you're 3 years old, or you don't even see that. We really acknowledge that when you're 18 or 25. But looking back and saying maybe this was just part of what I was served up. And you get served up something, and your
Yeah.
calling in life is to go out and find what you're supposed to do with it.
Can you tell us
And I think that life's been better for approaching it that way.
can you give us a story of maybe you or someone that you're very familiar with this story on they took this assessment and it unlocked some of the reasons why they act and behave a certain way, and they're like, "Oh my god, aha moment," and then how they use that data to help make better financial decisions, how to make better decisions for their health. I know that this plays into being able to reduce stress as well. You can just I wanna try to get some bite on this and some teeth into it to actual show something that, to put a little bit more color to what we're discussing.
Yeah, I think that if we take an example that for example, even with students, so there's a number of examples I can throw out here that you like I did, you go to university or college, and I did accountancy, or you go to university or college and do medicine, and you think that's what I'm supposed to do all of my life, but you're not happy with it, and you're not happy in the environment, and then you take an assessment like what we have, the DNA behavior, and you see that your hardwired talents that you've got, the way that you operate, is not aligned to what you're doing. And therefore, that gives you the courage now to make a shift in what you're going to go and do in your role. But it also can make a shift in how you make financial decisions from a risk-taking perspective. I always thought I was relatively cautious, but actually I could see that I was a bigger risk taker. So I've doesn't mean you just go out and take big risks, but I knew that I would be comfortable to take some bigger leaps of faith. For other people, they've been taking leaps of faith in their investment decision making because they've watched others doing it, and then they're left there emotionally distraught because they've lost money. And now we come and look at their behavioral style, and you see that they're very cautious. They really just want to have a comfortable lifestyle. They're content. They just want to keep within a range of goals. And they've been living outside of their zone because they felt like they had to keep up with the Joneses. So there's sort of some nuggets there that I think, in terms of your role, your work and role alignment, it's important if you want to become an entrepreneur. Have you really got what it takes in terms of certain talents to be an entrepreneur? And then in the investments people take, there's some people just overreach themselves and they need to haul it back, and others are actually underperforming or underdoing it because they think, well, I didn't see my parents taking risks. I was always told there's a bad thing to do it, but actually they're a caged up tiger like I was, and they need to go out and try it on. And yeah, you might lose the first time or second time around, but you need to be stretching yourself. I think that the thing is, I found when I went through this is I was already a hard worker or reasonably successful, but I needed to stretch myself more to be fulfilled.
Mm-hmm.
And I think these are the types of things, Brandon, that it will tell you. Yes, if somebody, from a pure investment point of view, it might help you align to, should I take more debt on in a business, for example. That's a common example. I worked with two business partners once upon a time. One was a very high growth orientated type guy, wanted to really build a big business. He had a partner that was really good at operations. They got to 5 million in turnover, pretty profitable, good, nice life. But the one that was the operations guy, more conservative, he didn't want to take on bank debt to expand the business and have a personal guarantee. The other guy was prepared to back himself, and that caused a split in the business.
Yeah.
But when you get, and they were at war with each other, but when you get to see as partners, okay, it's not one person's fault that happens. It's the fact that they're different, and what we need to do is show them how to work together better, or how to make a graceful exit and not ruin the business in the process. And for one of those two, the one that was more of the operational guy, it would have been too much stress for him and his wife to live with under the cloud of bank debt. For the other one, he didn't mind. But they've also got different life histories. But I think that understanding their behaviors and who they are helps you get to the right decision in terms of the business and how it's financed, for example.
Mm-hmm. How are
people, you're in real estate. This would be going on all the time. There are people there that are only going to put down, equity or cash to do deals. They're going to be very conservative with investment portfolios. There's going to be others that are going to get as much debt as they can. They're going to leverage up and leverage on leverage to expand their empire. It's a matter of, can they do that in a wise way? But if you understand the people, you can help them on that journey to do it. It's not saying gearing up and becoming a developer and land banking and building office buildings is the wrong thing. But you've got to be able to handle the consequences when it goes wrong too. You can't just, you can't just cry in your milk about it.
Yeah. Makes sense. How are you utilizing this tool to make improvements in your personal and business life? Can you give us like maybe a story?
Yeah, so I think there's a number of stories. I suppose I use the tool inside our company. So I'm the
Okay.
founder and of the business, and I've got a team under me. So I'm using it in that way to ensure we bring on the right people, and my executives in the business use it to bring on the right people. We also use it to bring on the right clients into the business. We use it to improve. I think the biggest thing, we use it inside the business, not only the recruiting, but also how we communicate with each other, so that we do that in a respectful way. We build organizational safety. I use it, managing my family dynamics in my own household. I've got my wife and 2 kids. By understanding who they are, they've been through it, even though my kids are still, 13 and 12.
Mhm.
I understand how they're wired, and I can, in a way, be their dad in more of a customized way that's a fit for them. And managing the dynamics with my wife, I know why certain things happen in certain ways and why they don't. So even with my mother, who's still alive, and my brother, I understand how they're wired up, and that all helps the family conversations, what decisions we
Mhm.
make financially, how we're tethered together or not tethered together on things.
Yeah.
That's
How are you utilizing this tool in your business to make hiring decisions and then making the communication in your organization better? You highlighted those were 2 reasons.
so
What
the
you
first thing
uses.
in the hiring, it's the first thing is defining the role that you want to hire for, and what talents, not skills, not what university degree, or do they know how to turn on a computer and use HubSpot or Salesforce or whatever, or how they negotiate, not those types of skills. We want to know their talents in terms of competitive drive. Are they outgoing? Are they going to be detail orientated? Whatever is necessary for the specific role, we define that, and then we will profile every candidate. So at the moment, we're hiring for a marketing person, and we will then, once we know what the talents we need for that marketing role, we then, for every candidate that applies, they go through the assessment, and they've got to have a right fit in their talents for us to interview them. So that's what we do. And then in the interview, we use the assessment to ask them questions about them. So it's like it becomes a behavioral interview to really see whether they're going to be able to do the role and be a fit. So that's how we do the hiring. And then in communication in the team, what we have in our reporting, Brandon, is certain communication keys. So like when people are communicating with me, I need options so I can decide. I don't need someone just coming up with, here's a problem, or dumping out a set of facts. Let's address the problem and give me the solutions that are going to solve the problem, and I'll make a decision in a nanosecond. If I don't, and it's not always the cheapest option, it's often really what's the highest value option. And often we really, in the end, they think I'm going to go for the cheapest thing. Most of the time, it's the more expensive one that offers more value.
Mhm.
But if that's laid out for me, decisions are easy. When it's not, you don't get a decision. But on the other side, working like with our CTO, for example, and I was just with him before I was talking to you,
Mhm.
I've got to ask my question, give him time to think about it. We discuss the facts, let him go away and research it, put it all together, and he comes up with the solutions. But I've got to give him time. If I just bombard him, the energy goes out of it, and then everybody feels tired, and there's a problem. So there's certain, if you want to call it, communication keys for each person that makes the communication work. And that's what you've got to understand. For other people, they need to see graphics. Others need research reports. Others just ask them how they feel.
So this tool, it'll tell one for the hiring what the certain talents are, why they behave the way they are, what certain innate talents, right? Like you said, not skill sets of your
Yeah,
degrees or anything like that, but innate talents. And then it also tell how they like to be communicated with, how they
yeah.
like to communicate. And if you understand those behavioral communication styles, you can get better fluency in the organization. It's ultimately going to drive things a whole lot better, it sounds like.
Because the roadblocks in an organization, a lot of the time, Brandon, come because people
Yeah.
don't know how to communicate with each other. Frictions come up. Somebody then doesn't want to do something or just doesn't understand it, and you're
Yeah.
re-explaining it, and it all comes down to communication. And every person, because we're all different, hears in a way the same message differently. So in some ways, the people who do it well know how to reframe the message for each person depending on who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the key. That's the art in that. Not easy to do, but if you're prepared to work at it, magic can happen.
What are some of those different communication styles that the assessment will reveal? And like maybe we can have some fun with this. Maybe we can play around with like one message and then tweak that message to the different styles and how it changes to be communicated. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, you're in the business of selling real estate or doing real estate deals, investments.
Yeah.
Uh, so you could have one investor or one person involved in the deal. Let's talk about the goals of the investment. What are the high level goals of the investment? How does that fit? What's the risk and reward? Right. Um, Another person, the opposite person to that, is going to want to know about, well, how's this going to make me secure? What's the point where this becomes a bad thing to do, and how do you put a safety net in for me? How do you educate me about the investment? How do you sit me down on a couch and actually talk about my feelings in relation to it? Make it feel like a very warm experience, maybe that it's more human than just a building. Um, Another person that needs to see an interactive video, take them through a walkthrough and show them another person that's going to be an investor that's sort of like a, you know, prominent person that's investing in something like this, and they're doing it because for similar reasons. And then you've got the Mr. Information out there that just needs to see every fact and detailed, and they need to see the 200-page prospectus plus some,
Yeah.
and give them a couple of weeks to study it, right? And then expect 200 questions coming back to you.
Yeah.
And that
I,
and
I
that's how it works. But you're not going to build trust if you don't get that part right.
it makes a whole lot of sense. You're trying to communicate with people in a way that they don't want to be communicated in. This got me really thinking because I'm like, man, my partner's like my business partner. Like sometimes I just think he's so bad at communicating. And it's just that like he just doesn't know how to communicate in my language because I like details. I like no stone to be unturned. I want to make sure nothing gets lost in translation. And his form of communicating is like, I'm going to send you something and you need to read my mind around what it is that I really wanted. And I get so frustrated with that. But if we both knew how we wanted to be communicated with, then you wouldn't have that frustration, that breakdown in communication.
So that's where the yin and the yang is in the partnership that you've got. And it's probably been successful to date because one of you's been able to go out there and inspire some clients and bring people to the table or negotiate a deal, and the other one of you's paid attention to all the operational issues and kept the house tidy.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but you know, and one will look at it, the sales one of you will look at it and think, well, I'm the one who brings in all the deals. I should have more money. This is when it'll start to become problematic. And, you over there have just looked after all the details. That's not as valuable. Whereas at the end of the day, both are of equal value because, yeah, you can bring in a deal, but it can all get lost if you're tardy with the information and the details, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the one who's doing all the detailed work and whatnot needs to recognize, yeah, the deal has got to come in. And so I think that coming to understanding how each of you tick and respecting that is important. And if you don't, it soon can become disrespect. And that's when the partnerships can go downhill, and, trust gets breached, or somebody goes and does a deal behind the other's back because they're just sick of, well, he doesn't understand, and I just need to get this shit done, right? That's what happens, right? So that's why communication is so important. Not everybody gives it the respect it should have, but everything succeeds or fails because of it, I think.
Yeah, 100%. This has been awesome. This has been a plethora of information. It has been awesome having you on the show. If somebody wants to, what's the name of this assessment? And if people want to learn more about it, access it, or learn more about you, where can they go?
Yeah, so it's the DNA Natural Behavior Discovery, and that's the assessment. You can find it on the homepage about halfway down at dnabehavior.com. So I'm happy for even, for you, Brandon, if you want to do a trial, or you and your partner, others, go and see it there. There's lots of content that I've written. It's all over the website and also in social media, particularly in LinkedIn, to learn more about how to use behavior and money insights for good in your life.
I love it, man. We'll make sure that those get posted. Did you say the website name, the URL?
dnabehavior.com.
Okay, so dnabehavior.com. We'll make sure that that gets posted in the show notes. Hugh, it's been amazing having you on the show today.
Thanks, Brandon. It's been great.
Been great. And hey, if you're listening to this, do Hugh and me a favor, show us some love, leave us a review, go share this with your friends and family. We will see you guys next time.